My husband caught me cheating with another man, and he reacted strongly. As a result, he got sentenced to 7 years in jail. Now my whole family hates me, and I feel guilty for ruining our happy family. Every night in my empty home, I reflect on my selfish actions. My children are not with me, and my ex husband understandably resents me. The incident happened in 2015, and now, at 39, I can't help but condemn myself. Looking back, I realize I didn't fully appreciate my ex husband during our 20-year relationship. He praised me, cared for me, and treated me as an equal partner. We started as high school sweethearts, and our love was deep and exclusive. Our bond felt natural, and my family admired him. He was a genuinely good person who helped others in their times of need. We raised two determined boys together. At the time of the incident, our children were teenagers, and I had gained weight, feeling self conscious. Despite my ex husband's reassurances about my beauty, I was not in the mood for intimacy. Turning 39 marked a new phase for me as I had transformed my body through gym workouts. My ex husband had also joined me in the gym, and despite our improved appearances, I still couldn't reciprocate his desire. He tried everything to reignite our intimacy, but mentally, I remained disinterested, attributing it to early menopause. A younger manager at my office showed interest in me, and our interactions escalated from casual chats to flirting. Despite wearing my wedding ring, I succumbed to my selfishness. I couldn't resist responding to his flirtations, and gradually, I started sharing personal details about my life. In hindsight, I see that it turned into an emotional affair, something I didn't acknowledge at the time. My ex husband began to notice that something wasn't right. We had a big argument, triggered when he tried to kiss me. I reacted with disgust, not really about him, but because I was caught up thinking about the other man. A week later, I arranged to meet the new manager at a cafe, intending to end the situation. Before I could say anything, he surprised me with a kiss, marking the beginning of our 6-month affair. During this time, I found myself more open and enthusiastic with the other man, doing things I hadn't done with my ex. My intimacy with my ex decreased, and I distanced myself, criticizing his habits and demeaning him. It took my brother telling me about my ex's deepening depression for me to realize the gravity of my actions. I broke off the affair, left my job, and decided to focus on showing love and desire to my husband, hoping to mend our relationship. Then the man I had the affair with came to my house with a box of my office items. During our talk, he asked why things ended. I told him I needed to concentrate on my marriage and asked him to leave. He requested one more meeting, and sadly, I agreed. We went to the guest room, things got intense, and suddenly, my ex walked in. The affair partner pulled back abruptly, hitting the wall. My ex, hurt and upset, attacked him. I begged my ex to stop, but in the chaos, I ended up on the ground. The police arrived, handcuffed my ex, and took him away. The situation worsened as my dad remained silent, looking ashamed, and my brother angrily yelled at me. He questioned how I could hurt my ex like that. My mom tried to soothe me, saying things would get better, but my dad raised his voice at her. His family was furious, and his sisters threatened me while his parents looked like they wanted me to suffer. I attempted to talk to my kids, but they wouldn't respond. My sons wouldn't even look at me. Simultaneously, the man I had the affair with was badly hurt and needed surgery after the fight with my ex. At the hospital, a woman suddenly attacked me. She was the wife of the man I had the affair with. I didn't know he was married, which added to my guilt. Before the trial, my sons stayed with their grandparents on my ex's side, and my daughters stopped talking to me. My ex didn't want to see me either, and when I tried to visit him in jail, they wouldn't let me. My brother, who worked at the correctional facility, arranged for my ex to be transferred there so he could watch over him. However, when I asked my brother to pass a message to my ex, he angrily told me to go to hell. During the trial, seeing my ex for the first time in 3 months, his intense anger hurt more than I could have imagined. He had always looked at me with love, even during arguments, but now it was pure hatred. I had to leave to cry in the bathroom. Time went by, and I had to share the details of my affair in court in front of everyone. When I told them how long it had been going on, My ex looked devastated, and my dad left the courtroom suddenly. Hearing my ex's testimony, I found out he had planned a surprise lunch and a weekend trip to the Catskills. He had a whole romantic weekend planned, but walked in on us instead. When the other man told him to move, my ex attacked him, stopping only when he pushed me away. He called 911 right after, and in court, we heard his painful voice and sobs on the recording as he talked to the operator. It was incredibly sad. The man I was with couldn't speak in court due to medication, so they showed pictures of his injuries. Seeing them made me feel sick. It was my fault my ex had hurt him so badly, breaking his eye socket, cheekbones, and jaw with some bone pieces too small to fix. My ex got 7 years for a third-degree felony. My sons protested the sentence. My daughter's and his family's cries of pain are something I still can't forget. The first 3 months were incredibly hard. My affair partner's ex-wife sued me for alienation of affection. My ex filed for divorce. My oldest son moved out. My other son stayed in his room all the time. And my twins were really acting out. My ex's sisters confronted me in a store, and his mom spat at me when I tried to apologize. My dad and brother wouldn't talk to me, and even my childhood friends were split on the issue. I had to find a new job because we had no money coming in, and our savings were almost gone. I was pretty much blacklisted in my field due to all the bad press of the accounting firm, so I started working in retail and got a seasonal job at H&R Block during tax season. I almost lost our house. My ex wouldn't let me visit him, and he sent back all the letters I wrote without opening them. I ended up crying in the shower almost every day. My parents' marriage suffered because my mom kept defending me, and my brother acted like I didn't exist. The guilt was crushing, and I started thinking about just disappearing and leaving everything behind. After some time, I decided to see a therapist who told me I had become too laid back with my ex. She said I saw him more as a friend with benefits than a husband, and she was right. I was too comfortable with him. He was a companion, but he still viewed me as his wife, the mother of his children, and the woman he loved. I had definitely taken him for granted. A whole year passed where my children didn't talk to me. Whenever I made dinner, they would just take their food to their rooms, not even looking at me. I broke down several times, begging them to talk to me, but they stayed quiet. My brother got married, and I wasn't invited, although my kids were. I kept trying to visit my ex, hoping he would let me see him, but I was always turned away, and he never opened my letters. Deep down, I knew I deserved the depression that had taken over. Suddenly, my brother showed up one day, the first time I'd seen him since the trial. I was happy to see him, but he wasn't there to make up. He came to scold me, telling me that my ex had been injured in the prison infirmary after trying to fight off another prisoner who tried to be intimate with him. My ex got injured in the stomach, and the other inmate ended up with a broken spine. My brother blamed me for what happened and left angrily in his truck. I cried for days because he was right. It was my fault. I tried to visit my ex in the infirmary, but they wouldn't let me. For another 4 years, I kept writing letters, but they were all sent back. Luckily, our kids visited their dad often, and I found out from them that my brother had gotten him into protective custody after the attack. As time went on, my oldest went to the same college and chose the same major as my ex, but only talked to his siblings and stayed away from me. He didn't come home for the holidays, preferring to go to his grandparents' house. My other son did the same, going to the same college and avoiding me. My twins were hard on me, but visiting their dad regularly seemed to help their mood. When they acted out too much, their uncle would step in to help. Still, my brother and I barely talked. I tried to visit his wife when their first child was born, but they asked me to leave. My mom kept me updated on their lives, while my dad continued to act like I didn't exist. Then, in early May this year, my kids came home for 4 months. I didn't know why, but I was just happy they were there. I tried to show how sorry I was, even though they mostly ignored me. Gradually, they started talking to me again. It was great to catch up with them and hear about their lives. My oldest was in a relationship for over a year. My second son was on the college track team, and my daughters were talking to me again. Seeing the pain I caused them made me feel even more guilty. Watching them smile, joke around, and have dinner together made me yearn for what we lost. As August drew to a close, I eagerly anticipated my twins' first day of their senior year, which coincided with their 18th birthday. I shared my enthusiasm for their birthday celebration and outlined my plans. Surprisingly, my girls requested to celebrate it on a different day. Without hesitation, their request left me bewildered because I thought we were making progress in rebuilding our relationship. When I inquired about their reasoning, one of them responded, "Because Dad is throwing us a party and I don't want you near him." This statement caught me off guard, and I sought clarification on when their father had been released. They informed me that he had been released at the end of April due to good behavior. Tears welled up in my eyes upon hearing this news, and it shattered me further. Their increased presence in the house was a result of his return. Their happiness and contentment stemmed from having their father back in their lives, not from the progress we were making in healing. They had him back. I asked about his living arrangements, and they disclosed that he was residing with my brother. I attempted to contact my brother, desperate for a conversation, but he refused. I made an effort to visit, clutching the letters that had been returned over the years, and caught a glimpse of him briefly through the partially open door. I called out his name, but my brother requested that I leave. I handed him the letters and departed. As I reached the driveway, I heard his voice. I turned around, and he was approaching me. Tears streamed down my face, and I moved to embrace him. He returned my letters, uttering coldly, "You forgot this," and I wept as I watched him walk away. I begged and pleaded for him to talk to me, but he simply retreated into the house. My children stood by the door, gazing at me with an absence of affection in their eyes. In that moment, I realized that my children were merely tolerating my presence. Nevertheless, I maintained a fervent desire to mend our fractured bonds. I yearned to confess my selfishness, express how much I had missed him, and convey my profound remorse for dismantling what we once shared. So I continued to navigate my daily life, hoping for an opportunity to make amends. I learned from my mother that my affair partner's ex-wife had visited my ex 2 years ago and was still making periodic visits. Honestly, I cared little about that. My sole wish was for him to somehow forgive me, engage in conversation with me, stand by my side, and regard me with the same affection as before. I longed for my children to stand with us, and I harbored a deep yearning to reunite my family, even though I recognized that I didn't deserve it. Even if by some miracle we were to reconcile, it could never be the same. I had acted selfishly, and I wished fervently that I could undo it. Now let's examine the community's perspective. In the first opinion, there's sympathy for my ex-husband, recognizing the emotional misuse and dismissive behavior I inflicted upon him. The advice emphasizes the importance of seeking support from friends who will hold me accountable for my actions rather than condoning them. Therapy is suggested as necessary. Opinion number 2 recommends that I should stop trying to reconnect with my former family members and those who have distanced themselves from me. The advice is to live my life and move forward. These opinions reveal the complexity and seriousness of the situation, underlining the need for self-reflection and personal growth. It's essential to avoid actions that might come across as harassment, and sometimes it's crucial to recognize when certain situations have reached an irreparable point. In opinion number 3, it's acknowledged that my children have cut off contact, possibly because my twins are still underage and living with me. The gravity of the situation, where my family essentially lost their father, and my ex lost years of his life in a hostile environment, is recognized. This opinion sees my letters and apologies as ineffective and advises me to respect my ex's choice. The focus should be on my own mental health and my relationship with my children. The idea of returning to the way things were is deemed unrealistic, and it's recommended to be realistic about the future of my relationship with my ex. In summary, opinion number 3 advises acceptance of the situation, personal growth, and a focus on rebuilding relationships with my children. All right, that was a reflective story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. I often woke up to find her going through my phone, and if I protested, she would hand me her phone and tell me to go through it as well. For 2 years, I endured this, believing that her behavior stemmed from insecurity and a fear of losing me because she loved me so much. Little did I know that she had been steadily cheating on me and deceiving me the entire time. Furthermore, when she handed me her phone, I never actually checked it because I trusted that she had nothing to hide. In reality, she had secrets hidden away. My line of work required occasional travel to meet with clients, and every time I informed my wife about an upcoming trip, it inevitably led to an argument. The primary reason for these fights was her claim that I didn't spend enough time with her, and she disliked my frequent traveling. So, the last time I traveled, this was before I discovered her hypocrisy. I finished my business with a client a day ahead of schedule and decided to return home to surprise my wife, knowing she wasn't pleased about my travels. When I arrived home, the house was quiet, but I noticed a pair of sneakers in my living room that didn't belong to me. As I walked down the corridor, I saw a shirt just outside our bedroom door. The bedroom was slightly ajar, and when I opened it to investigate, I found my wife and my closest college friend in bed together. They were both unclothed and cuddled up, sound asleep and snoring, indicating they had just been intimate. I was completely shocked and devastated. I couldn't believe that my wife, who had accused me multiple times of cheating when I was innocent, was actually having an affair. In that moment, I felt a strong urge to confront them, but I realized that doing so would only make things worse. Instead, I took out my phone and discreetly snapped several pictures of them. Then I left the house while they were still asleep. I shared their pictures in my wife's family WhatsApp group and sent them to our close friends, and even the people who knew my college friend. By the time they woke up, almost everyone in our social circle had seen those pictures and sent them angry messages. Shortly after, my wife realized what was happening and called me to ask if I had received any pictures from an unknown number. I told her that I had given her up that evening to collect her things and leave my house. When I said that, she understood it was me, and instead of getting defensive like I expected, she started pleading with me on the phone. She claimed it wasn't what it seemed and couldn't explain how it had happened, but I didn't buy into her excuses. After I shared the pictures with my friends, some of them confessed that they knew about my wife's infidelity. I was stunned that some of my friends had known about my wife and my friend cheating on me, but had never said anything. I was furious and decided to cut them off completely by blocking them. As for my wife, she begged me not to make a decision that would ruin our marriage, despite having already destroyed it with her infidelity. I had grown tired of her and her manipulation, and I didn't hesitate to divorce her. As someone mentioned before, I'd like to emphasize that some women aren't worth the sacrifices men make for them. It's still hard to believe that while I was trying my best to be a good husband to her, my wife had been cheating on me since the first year of our marriage, and I never suspected a thing. She went so far as to paint me as the villain all the time while she was having an affair right under my nose with my friend. Speaking of him, I cut all ties with him, and as I share this story, I consider him dead to me, along with my friends who watched my wife cheat on me but never said anything. I've made up my mind never to marry again. Marriage isn't worth all the stress and drama, and it's better to be a single and free man than to be married to a manipulative and unfaithful cheater. We supported each other and strived to find better job opportunities. With May, I felt complete and looked forward to spending the rest of my life with her. She had a childlike spirit and had a knack for bringing joy to any place she went. People adored May, and she was quite popular among her friends, especially since her father held a leadership position when she was in high school. Besides being an excellent wife, May was also a wonderful friend. She had two best friends she frequently hung out with, and sometimes they would plan weekend getaways or have their regular girls' night out. I never objected because I understood the importance of her spending time with her friends even in marriage. I had also become friends with her best friends' husbands, so when May and her best friends went on vacation, the three of us would spend time together as well. We continued this for 2 years of our marriage. Even when we spent time as a family unit, I never suspected that May was cheating on me with one of her best friend's husbands. While I noticed she was particularly close to one of them, I didn't think it was anything more than friendship. I believed he was the one she related to the most, and I held on to this belief until I discovered a dark truth. One evening, May informed me that she was going out to hang out with her friends. As usual, I watched her get ready, putting on a new dress she had recently purchased, and doing her makeup. This was her usual routine, so I didn't find anything unusual about it. I even gave her some cash in case she needed it for herself and her friends. About an hour after she left, I was looking for my golden watch in our jewelry drawer when I came across May's wedding ring. It struck me as odd that she had left her ring behind, as it wasn't like her to do so. I tried calling her, but after several unsuccessful attempts, I decided to call one of her best friends. When her best friend answered the call, I asked to speak with my wife. She informed me that May wasn't with her and that they weren't planning to hang out that night. While I was trying to process the fact that May had lied to me and left her wedding ring at home, her best friend asked if her husband was with me. I hadn't seen him, and I was surprised by her question. She was shocked when I told her that I hadn't seen her husband since the last time we all hung out. She mentioned that her husband had told her he was going out for a drink with me that night, and it was strange that he wasn't with me. At this point, we both realized that something was amiss, and we suspected that my wife and her husband might be together since they had coincidentally lied to both of us on the same night. To locate her husband, she attempted to check his Snapchat location, but it was turned off. When I checked May's Snapchat location, it was active, and we decided to head to the location. My heart sank when I realized that May's location was a hotel. We began documenting our process of going to May's hotel room. When I knocked on the door of the room she was staying in, she opened it and was utterly shocked to see both me and her best friend. She was wearing a bathrobe with nothing underneath, and her best friend's husband was in bed, expecting her to attend to whoever was at the door and then return to him. As soon as we entered the room, I began to raise my voice at her while recording the incident. She felt deeply embarrassed. Her best friend was furious and even physically confronted her husband and May for betraying her. May was overwhelmed with shame and couldn't bring herself to make eye contact with me. She didn't attempt to explain herself and stood there with tears streaming down her cheeks. After I had recorded enough, I left with her best friend and warned May not to come home. She didn't return that night and likely spent it in the hotel room with her affair partner. That night, she not only lost her marriage, but also her longtime friend. Her best friend and I decided to post the video online without concealing their identities, intending to further humiliate her. We combined the video with the Snapchat location data and kept sharing them online until many people started reposting them. This was especially humiliating for her because most people in our hometown knew her, and she had been friends with her best friend since high school. This was the first time I had ever been so heartbroken, and I was not myself for weeks. Days after catching her with her best friend's husband, she tried to beg me and promised it would never happen again, but I remained unmoved by her words. We ultimately divorced because I couldn't bear the shame of being associated with her infidelity. Similarly, her best friend divorced her husband and gained custody of their 2 children after the video went viral. My wife couldn't face the public due to the judgmental looks she received from people. She couldn't even attend her high school reunion because everyone had seen the video. On my part, I had to relocate to a different place to start my life anew. Whenever I recall how my wife deceived me and betrayed her friend of more than 15 years, it still astonishes me. She didn't value our marriage or her friendship with her friend, and someone capable of such actions could do even worse things. I know that I won't be entering another relationship anytime soon because my heart still aches when I remember how much I love my wife and how she ruined everything we had.